It's the 4th of November, coming up on today's Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. It's total chaos surrounding the elections, and decisions by political operatives seem to change faster than the fall weather. Find out what's being discussed behind the scenes. And this election could seal the fate of the United States and possibly the rest of the world. Meanwhile, the secret space program operatives have been trying to open a gateway all weekend long, hoping for a Hail Mary move. Well, happy Monday, everyone. It's the 4th of November, and it's been a busy weekend, as usual. So let's get to it. I know we're not normally talking about elections and political stuff because it's kind of been not relevant to our world, really. But I think it's time we talk about it a little bit because there's a lot more at stake here than just who gets to sit in a big White House. So we did make a vote on Saturday. We voted for Jill Stein. I know that's no surprise. Couldn't vote for the other ones. And remember something, I know this isn't about politics, so please understand that. This is about a player that doesn't have operative control, number one. And number two, it is the outlier, but if they did decide to adhere to the political line, then it would be someone that would be believable to the American people. The Green Party is now on the ballot in most states. I know there are a few that they are not, and a few they are awaiting signatures for, but it could actually be something that could actually happen, and the American people and the rest of the world would buy it. It's believable. We can't put someone in there that's not even on the ballot. So please, try to understand why we make the decisions we do. Sometimes it's not about what everybody wants. It's about, what's believable and what's not. So it's a believable decision that doesn't put either the Rothschilds, aka Kamala Harris, in charge, or at least as the puppet. And it doesn't put her operatives in charge, more importantly. And it doesn't put the Trump and the Trump operatives or the Order of the Black Sun in charge either. So this was a decision that we actually made over the weekend, and we'll see how it goes. And I can tell you what's happened since then. It's pretty funny, actually. There has been a lot going on as far as people contacting us and reaching out to us, trying to figure out what can be done, since there are days, very few days left, as far as any kind of budget is concerned, as far as running the United States is concerned, and several other countries in the world. China's just gone. There's very little budget over there, despite the fact that the government owns a large portion of most major corporations over there, and despite the fact that they're still stealing free oil from Iran, basically free, and, promising that money will come at some point in the future. Russia is probably on the heels of China. They're not too far off. They've put a lot out there for the Ukraine war. There is a deep discount on their oil sales and gas sales now, based on the fact that there are sanctions because it's all black market. There's no black market trading against oil or off-ledger trading against oil anymore. I know that the oligarchs have put up a lot of cash recently for the BRICS meetings and lots of trade deals that they're having a hard time fulfilling throughout the African continent. They kind of became the face of BRICS as it relates to other countries over the last year or so, due to China's declining, credibility, because they have not performed. There is definitely a lot of talk about no BRICS currency being possible behind the scenes. And from there on out, there's a lot of backdoor dealings that happen with the fake BRICS currency as well. And doesn't look like that's going to pan out in the next 60 days like they had promised. This takes us to other things that are at stake with this selection we call an election. Other things at stake. There's a lot of turmoil going on in the Middle East. Still a lot of talks and a lot of promises going on in just about every single Middle Eastern country. There have been promises to Iran. There have been promises to Saudi Arabia, promises to Syria, Jordan, Israel, the Gaza Strip, Iraq, and everybody is throwing their hat in the ring based on what they are being told. What they are being told is that there will be a war in the Middle East. The US government will be 100% behind it. There will be an enormous amount of funding that will come along with these promises for pipelines and rearranging of pole position in the Middle East as far as who's going to be in charge, which nation is going to take charge. Unfortunately, they have several nations allegedly going to take charge there. Revaluations of currencies are being talked about, and all kinds of pie in the sky promises that they have probably, even if they had trillions of dollars, no intention on fulfilling. Some of those promises are very old. They're over a decade old. Some of them are even decades old, probably 5 decades old. As it relates to Iran and other countries. Now, this war is due to kick off possibly tomorrow, but definitely between the 6th and the 7th, depending on the results of the selection that are happening here in the United States. So you could say that there are millions of lives at stake right now, should the selection go one way or another. The one thing that is an absolute certainty when it comes to these people is money talks and lack of it walks. There is a lot of discussions going on between political operatives in the Middle East where they're saying if there is no result by February or the end of January, some are saying end of January, beginning of February, but it's pretty much for the same reason. That they will no longer have anything to do with the current regimes throughout the Middle East, meaning they'll no longer believe them anymore. And by regimes, I'm not talking about heads of state. I'm talking about the Pallavicini family. I'm talking about secret space program, American cowboy duck dynasty people. I'm talking about those that have led the pack since the other quote unquote leaders are no longer with us. That is where most of them are at right now. They do all the preparations. There's been a lot of, let's say, fighter jets going throughout the Middle East, being positioned. There's been a lot of cargo planes all over the place, moving this and moving that, all in preparation for this selection. So the reason why we're talking about the selection today has more to do with what's happening in the Middle East and a possible world war than anything else. The second reason why we're talking about the selections is because the fate of the world's financial system hangs in the balance. These people, and you know who we're talking about, global headquarters, Langley 5, political operatives, and the secret space program folks, along with the Order of the Dragon and the Black Sun, who have kind of remained behind the scenes for now, and they're letting the operatives sort of duke it out. But they are all kind of in the mix here as it relates to financial system control. And without financial system control, they control nothing, and they know it. Could they possibly use all of their contacts and connections to get more weapons throughout the Middle East and buy time? Possibly. Some of the things being discussed behind the scenes with the Trump operative groups are that they are talking about faking it till they make it. And The decisions would be one of the possible outcomes would be that Trump wins, but the election is contested. Therefore, dragging it out for another week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, maybe it's 11/11, maybe it's 11/22. They're throwing about around both dates on which they possibly think they could get I don't know, some kind of system control or something. And then they would actually say, oh, look, he did win, and all would go as planned in their mind. Now, by as planned, we have a lot of very high level donors and participants. A lot of them are what you would call corporations that fund and feed the military industrial complex, say gun manufacturers, Lockheed Martin and Boeing, and all of those that provide weapons if there is to be a war. And they are doing so and supporting all of their cray-cray based on the fact that they have been promised multi-trillion dollars in contracts. So there are a lot of contracts for the military industrial complex worldwide that make up the war machine that would actually be making enormous profits should there actually be a world war. So this is what is at stake behind the scenes for a selection. They are also talking about civil unrest in the United States. They are talking about inciting some kind of a civil war in the U.S., which would then result in martial law. In which case they win as well in their mind because they would take control of all the militaries, which they kind of already have. Problem with that is you got to pay the people, meaning you'd have to pay the military industrial complex, you'd have to pay the Pentagon, you would have to pay the National Guard, and that is very, very expensive. Not only that, if there were a civil war, things like taxes. There wouldn't be a whole lot of jobs out there. We would end up in a worse situation than we would be if we had another pandemic, which has also been discussed. But the other parties that suffer as well are the large corporations, your corporate industrial complex, shall we say. You have your airline corporations. You also have your large corporations like Walmart, other large manufacturers like 3M. Consumers are not going to buy goods if there's a civil war during the holiday season. So there's a lot of things to take into account should they decide to go that route. So when I say there's a lot at stake, there's definitely a lot at stake. Now, last but certainly not least, there is obviously zero support coming from us. We have had a lot of inquiries from various Treasury people that would like to see us fund the government because there isn't really anywhere that they can get a significant amount of money to keep the federal government running at this point. Everybody is pretty well broke with the additional debt calls that happened at the end of last week. And they're really scraping the bottom of the barrel at this moment in time. But as I have said, and I will continue to say with 100% certainty, that I am not getting involved with the cray-cray behind the scenes. I'm just not. I don't trust those operatives. They didn't do anything they said that they were going to do in the 4 years, or at least 3, in which we supported one of the prior administration, and definitely doesn't look any better in this one. So, handbooks and things that they have followed in the past are failing. They are not getting their way when it comes to certain things, and we'll get into the more crazier stuff, I guess crazier parts of this in just a few minutes. But let's talk about possibilities that have been discussed all weekend long, and it changes like the wind right now. My 12-year-old daughter didn't change like the wind as quickly as these people are changing their minds. So, possibility number 1, Trump wins, and they have to fulfill their promises. That means 247% profits, which doesn't exist, on pipelines and such throughout the Middle East. Loads and trillions of dollars in contracts or other currencies to the entire military industrial complex worldwide. Larger corporations. I don't know if you've heard or not, but American Airlines allegedly has canceled all flights to Israel, to the Ben Gurion airport, through 2025. So this is, they're definitely preparing for something over there, and somebody's got to foot the bill. Just like somebody was supposed to foot the bill when they canceled a lot of flights or emergency flights only during the pandemic. And nobody has still foot that bill, but yet they still believe them and cancel flights anyway. So if they can't fulfill the promises, which they've been trying feverishly to do, then they are considering that Trump wins, option number 2, and the election is contested until they can, figure something out. So they're like, is there another gateway time? Is there another new moon, a full moon, an alignment with Uranus, a solstice, an equinox? There's got to be something we can think of while this is being contested in order to fulfill our promises. This is what they're talking about. And to get what they want, they really would like to decimate the Middle East. This has gone back to the days of Cheney. The plan is very old. It was not written by humans, but it was passed down through the ranks with promised funding, should they ever fulfill that plan, to the tune of $14 trillion. Now that contract has expired. There's nothing left behind it. There's no funding for it. Even if they were to be successful, there's still no funding for those types of contracts in currency. Okay, next, Kamala wins, and they bail on all their promises. This is also being discussed because behind Kamala, has there been a lot of operative promises around the world? Well, not really, because those operatives seem to kind of be the underdog in this situation, and the cowboys have kind of pretty much tried to take control, which is why you're seeing total chaos out there right now. Okay, next. Jill Stein wins. Well, poor Jill. Jill has been approached by many operatives. They are saying that they promised her lots of money, lots of funding, if she wins, however they would be handling her on behalf of their funders. They don't say who they are. Obviously, you know who they are. But she adamantly declined, which gives us another vote for Jill Stein, doesn't it? She adamantly declined any kind of handlers or deep state or, operative control systems, which kind of leaves them out in the cold. However, if you're talking to people at the Treasury Department or, at different heads of different departments within the government, knowing that she's a surefire ratified president, and that the U.S. would actually survive and wouldn't be scraping and wouldn't be dependent on a new moon, a full moon, or an alignment with Uranus or any other planet for that matter. That's sounding pretty good to everybody else, and they're trying to convince the operatives that this might be the way to go. So they've actually been talking amongst each other behind the scenes, thinking, maybe we can put the Secret Service out there as a front. Maybe we could get the Secret Service to manipulate her. Well, she's not that easily manipulated. And if you're thinking about doing something else more drastic, JFK-like, you have lost your ever-loving mind. So that's not going to work out. So these are all kind of things that are building up behind the scenes based on what happens tomorrow. Unfortunately, at this moment in time, the fighting is a little bit heated. There is no actual decision at this moment, which is almost unheard of, because usually these things are decided months, if not years ahead of time. And why does it keep wavering back and forth? Well, let's go to our Trump operatives, our cowboys, the Lone Rangers out here. who say they have it all under control. They have convinced everybody they have it all under control, and that money was going to come pouring out every day, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and probably tomorrow. Well, we have to wait till this election. And they know it's not working. They were also expecting some alien invasion to happen, which they thought they miscalculated. That would actually happen on Saturday. That did not happen. No gateway opened today, like they said on their Q clock, and everywhere else didn't happen. Instead, something else has been happening, and it's not in their favor. There has been a lot of interesting things happen as the last bits of the hologram and the other systems go down. And trust me when I tell you, they don't just miraculously go down. That's one thing I think that may be misunderstood by many. They don't just all of a sudden fall, like, whoopsie, there goes the hologram, or gee, there's more of a connection, so it just all disappears. This has taken, anywhere some days from 10 to 18 hours a day, if not more, on my part and some other people's parts that have been working diligently to remove space junk to ensure these things don't happen. The same thing goes with their gateways and other things. As we see, well, we kind of see when they say there's going to be an opening or a gateway, we see, a small little, and it looks similar or feels similar on a much larger scale to you trying to start your car and maybe your battery's dead. So sometimes all you hear is click, 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 click. So there is a noise, there is a thing that happens, but you're not going to start that car up and you're not going to go anywhere. Or, maybe your starter's going in your car and you try to turn it on and it just goes, and something's not right there. And this is what we see every time they say there's going to be a day. There's going to be an alignment. There's going to be something. We see probably 1/10 of the amount of space junk, or in this case, car parts, that are required to start your car or to start up a gateway or to open something up. And because of that, there has been no real starting. There's been no gateways. There's been no reclaiming of Omega systems. There's been no access. I do know that they did get, or were looking for all weekend, and they appear to have gotten something that makes them all excited, some kind of old Abraxas system codes or some kind of access from some alien somewhere. I don't think they got it actually from the alien itself, but maybe found some old archives in a cave somewhere or something, because they seem to be entering these codes at like a rapid rate, trying to gain some kind of control and connection that a human would never have had. Now, they are specifically designed, again, not to allow human access should they ever get their hands on it. They are designed to kill those people that try to use those codes if it is a human. They're DNA activated. By DNA, I use that term very loosely, meaning they know the amount of essence and other things within that human does not match the human that's trying to access it. Our codes and our stuff is all built by us from scratch. They don't have that capacity and they don't have that ability. And therefore, they're trying to use anything that is old to bring in something old, which doesn't really exist anymore for the most part. So we kind of took the starter out of the car, and we probably also took the alternator and the battery and anything else we could find that could possibly allow them to start anything up once again. So they're in a little bit of a conundrum this evening. They don't know which way to go. Civil war, create a distraction, martial law. Either way, there's a huge bill that has to be paid, and there is no automated funding anymore for these type of activities. This is all a manual thing done that is done now, and it is done by me. And I am not supporting any of those things. I'm sure you probably wouldn't either. Just to buy them time so that they can get what they quote unquote want. And nah, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, fool me once, shame on you, I should say, fool me twice, shame on me. And I'm not falling for that again. So they'll spend 4 broke years with the worst administration in history, trying to scrape and scramble and getting zero international support. And it could make a mess. But really, truly think about it. There really isn't a whole lot that the federal government does that means a whole lot to you. I mean, sure, the state government stuff like your fire department, a city, and, and those things you pay property taxes for, and then they come out and, put the fire out should your house ever catch on fire. Or, police obviously is something that's needed to a degree at this time, just to keep law and order, that kind of stuff. Those things will continue because that's all paid for with, state and local taxes and those kind of things. Most of that, at least 50% of it goes to the state. So, that'll still continue. Those services will still be there. Social Security, as we talked about, and all those other things, they go through the Ways and Means Committee. Does the Ways and Means Committee have any more money? Well, not really, but we could create our own and create a different kind of funnel. We've done it before. We have paid Social Security successfully once using a backdoor that we have into the FireTV system, which handles all of those things on behalf of the federal government. So if we needed to continue those things, we can surely do so in the interim until we have a better program that comes out, like Life Essentials and other programs that we've talked about in the past. So there's plenty of other things that we can actually do to keep things smoothly going while these crazy people figure out what they're going to do. One thing I know for sure is you're going to have an awful lot of Middle Eastern elite that are extremely disappointed because one way or another, those things are probably not going to happen. There's going to be an awful lot of negotiations that would have to take place. And I can tell you right now, I'm not willing to pay those people unless they pay me back what they owe me. So remember, these Trump operatives owe about 2% of, that's about $400 billion or so, maybe 500 or close to at this point in time, to the CARE organization. That's obviously not to me personally. I don't have any need for that kind of thing. But, this is our 2% administration fee under a contract that actually expired back in 2022. So we don't have that contract anymore. Therefore, I can change that number to whatever we want to change it to. But they still owe us a lot of money, which they have no hope of actually paying, but they gladly spent amongst themselves. So that means that you've got plenty of Bentleys, plenty of cars, plenty of condos, plenty of trucks, plenty of traveling you did on my dime. You could probably give me some of those free seats you've got on airlines and contracts that you have with private plane corporations, plus your carte blanche travel on all U.S. military helicopters and airlines and even Air Force One and the Doomsday plane and all those other things that you can fly on at any given moment in time. And we may like some of that. So, there's negotiations that could actually be had. However, nobody's willing to even talk about that. They're still looking for a way around us. So we'll see what tomorrow's selection brings. It changes with the wind. I could have predicted it 5 minutes ago it was going to go one way and would see Trump. And 5 minutes later, it could be a civil war and martial law. You just don't know what's actually going to take place tomorrow. And neither do they, quite frankly. They're all over the place. And really, as far as we the people, we threw our hat in the ring. We played the game. Are they willing to play? Are they really willing to negotiate? Are they really willing to compromise like they said? Meh, we'll see. I doubt it. I think there's probably more chance of me flying away this evening on a unicorn somewhere. But hey, you never know. Maybe a unicorn will appear in the driveway tomorrow. Well, that's about it for Monday's World Situation Report. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Not holding my breath either way. I have lots of other things to do as far as, finishing off these connections and working with Source. There's a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes there, and they're all positive for us. We are continuing to work diligently for our own benefit, meaning not my own personally, but for the people's benefit, while trying not to have a world war. That's pretty much where we're at right now. We'll see. Will they put us into this put themselves into this really untenuous situation where they have to fulfill all those promises or lose all their contacts and connections? According to operatives in the Middle East, that will end by January. So by the time that their selected president gets into office, nobody in the Middle East is going to talk to you anymore, and you won't get your world war anyway. That's what everybody is discussing on both sides, on all sides, on the Muslim side and on the Shia side and on the Sunni side and on the Jewish side and the Israeli side and everybody else's side. Nobody is going to be talking to you by then. So you could kick the can for a couple of months. Meh. Could you get somebody to perform some kind of function? Well, let me tell you what kind of function they're getting right now. Looks like there was a big announcement by Israel. They were attacked by Iraq. They were attacked by Syria. They were attacked by all these people. And it's going to be any minute that Iran's going to attack them, blah, 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 blah. But yet there's no proof. There's no footage. There's no nothing out there. There's zero but lip service. That's all they've got is lip service. They're telling everybody that all these things happened, but there's nothing that happened. But I guess it creates fear or what. But, funny enough, speaking of fear and whatnot, there's been a lot of questions from a few Middle Eastern countries. And some of these countries, like Syria and Iraq, and, they've been at war for a long time, and they're always on the brink of being at war for one reason or another. And someone made a comment to me that they've seen everything. And they said the only thing that the Americans haven't done to us is pulled the zombie the zombie attack. But they're prepared for it either way, and they started laughing. And it's true. There's not a whole lot that those people haven't seen. They've survived. They know lip service when they see it, and nobody's really buying it. Are there alleged leaders of the various groups and countries buying it? Oh, yeah. There's no amount of lip service and BS that their egos don't buy. That's the problem. It's all about ego. It's all about what they're going to get. And they dangle carrots big enough so that the castle they build in their head is so huge that they'll just wait. But they're not going to have any operatives working for them come January or February. That's what it looks like pretty much throughout the entire Middle East right now. Throughout the rest of the world, who knows? You have a lot of loyalists in China and the US and Russia and the UK. So we'll see. But, tomorrow, I don't know. Hold on to your hat. It could be a rough couple months. We'll have more on that on Wednesday. On Wednesday, it looks like I also have an interview with George the Iceman to discuss the selection. So it's going to be a pretty busy Wednesday. You're going to get a Global Intelligence Agency report, and you're also going to see an interview later on in the evening. So that'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. And looking forward to see what happens tomorrow. We'll keep you updated. Thank you so much. See you then.